Good. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Systems for Creation podcast. We are here with Antoine Pelegrin, one of the original members of Gas Station Mentality, and a faculty member in the school. Here we go. So, we're going to talk today about Cyclical Antiquity. I wanted to start by asking where you guys came up with that name.
Just thinking about the past coming back and being relevant all over again. Gas Station has been around for a while, so we have a lot of material, and it just seemed logical to start looking at the old material to find inspiration for the new material. It just seemed like a logical conclusion. And then we just took it to a new level of like actually rearranging previous music. I can't think of any examples of that in other bands, but it seems like such an obvious idea because you're capitalizing on that nostalgia. So it's like another layer of nostalgia. And the thing is, we weren't explicit about that on the album. It doesn't say, you know, people kind of put the pieces together. Right now is like the first time I'm really revealing that this is even a thing, right? Unless you figured it out on your own, right? But it's kind of like Easter eggs, right? The album's full of those Easter eggs, the cyclical antiquity coming back around from the previous albums. That antiquity that recreated comes back cyclically. And if you've been paying attention, you hear that and you're like, okay, why is this instant classic GSM hitting so hard? And it's like, oh, it's because actually you've heard some of those sequences before. And like they're in different keys and things like that sometimes, usually like a half step different. So there are those like subtle differences, but you still kind of recognize, oh wait, this sounds like that classic thing.
Yeah, there are all kinds of cycles within the album itself. Like you can hear it at the very beginning, you can hear it being wrapped up at the end, right from the get-go. I mean, Doppelgangster, you want to talk a little bit about that? That reggae voice that happens. There in Doppelgangster, and then it comes back at the end.
Yeah, I think the idea came first with Doppelgangster because we had that idea of dub or reggae sounding section. There is a lesson you must learn. There is fire you must get burned. Sampling, using samples, using voice samples was fair game, you know. I think we wanted to go there. Digging into what it means to sound reggae, but also subvert that basic sound, because in Doppelgangster, that whole like reggae section is actually in 11/8. It's kind of based on a pattern that's reoccurring in the tune. Then that pattern transforms itself, and we kind of extract a reggae sounding groove from it. But it's interesting because if we want 11/8 to sound reggae, we need to make it sound like 4/4, make it sound like something else, you know. So that was a whole exercise in the orchestration. And that reggae voice kind of brought that mythical also element, that mantra-like element that was compelling to me, and that kind of fit with the whole initiation vibe of Doppelgangster. As it's like the first tune, it's like intriguing, doesn't sound like classic GSM so much. You know, we explore like a more like of a punky ska kind of directions. To me, a very intriguing, kind of mysterious kind of sound, and then it evolves into that whole trippy reggae section with that voice that's like almost the voice of a sorcerer, sort of a guide. Really fit that old initiatic vibe.
Yeah, first track is Initiation, and then it picks up from there for the rest of the album. Yeah.
It's worth pointing out that is the least traditional GSM sound ever.
I agree.
So when you start out the album, you're like, is this even GSM anymore? Like, because you got the vocal, On y va. So good. Just like, I love how that album starts, right? Like that is when, you know, the Doppelgangster is like, it's this just anonymous like consciousness, and we're taking it up in that moment, it just revolutionizes our sound right away at the beginning of the album. And you're like, how is this going to connect back to like classic GSM? And then, sure enough, it does, because we literally rearranged old material. But also, getting to that vocal sample level and just finally like perfecting that vocal icing on the cake of GSM in the form of that sample.
There is a lesson you must learn. There is fire you must get burned.
It's so beautiful. I mean, it's such a beautiful, that whole reggae moment with that sample evolved in like one of like Miles Davis, Dorian stuff. And so just kind of figuring out like that ultimate GSM realization where you get the vocal. And it ends up being that shaman, like telling you a message, a warning, that comes back later.
Yep. Totally. One other thing I wanted to talk about, actually, this is a question for you, Antoine, in our communications earlier, is when you were talking about the ghost pattern of 11/8 that happens within Doppelgangster and some of these other tracks, right? There are these ghost patterns. What did you mean by ghost pattern?
I guess I mean something that even if it's not played, it still guides a lot of the arrangement. Kind of a latent, it's a latent kind of part, but that's always underlying. And in Doppelgangster, to me, it plays the role of some sort of a character. It's not clear what character exactly. Maybe it's the Doppelgangster. Maybe the Doppelgangster is kind of that lick. Yeah, that lick guides us in the melody transition. Many musical choices we do, and it's kind of a useful constraint. I think it encapsulates a lot of the spirit of that tune. It's like a kind of a little like childlike kind of melody on like 1, 2, 3 of the scale. Very basic, and yet it contains a lot. So I think that speaks to the whole spirit of arrangement, relating back to the cyclicality and to the antiquity. Just the whole idea of recycling material and really paying attention to what's implied in the basic material.
It's like the ghost is always with you. It's always there connecting everything that you do. So you never have like anything that sounds disjointed. The ghost pattern connects all things. It's kind of like with beat cycles, it's that same idea, right? As long as you're using that like geometry that's the same, you can mess it up 6 ways from Sunday and it will still all be connected. That's literally what that whole ending of Doppelgangster is. It feels like we like took it in every possible direction, because it drops into that quarter note feel at one point. Do we change? No, nothing changed. It's all connected.
Do you think that the end of Doppelgangster kind of hints at like New Sky a little bit?
Yeah, for sure, you said it. Gets more poppy in a way. It's that like basic Aeolian kind of harmony, flat 3, flat 7, flat 6.
Try so hard. Failure is your just reward. There is a lesson you must learn. There with fire you must get burned.
Gets slower also, and I mean we have some harmony in Doppelgangster, but especially in the beginning, it's not meant to be pretty, It's meant to be like demented, almost funny also.
The first time I heard it, like I was laughing. Like I was just like, what? Oh man! Like, because it really sounds like scary part of a cartoon.
Exactly, dude. Looney Tunes all the way, right?
Courage the Cowardly Dog.
felt that too.
So to come back to the ending, the harmony is like more major 7. You went through your whole trip. Now you're ready for the next level, you know? It's kind of, it's a little death. It's like the death of your ego. And the last tune, New Sky, is also about dying. And it's the last tune, so it's the end of the cycle. And now once again, you're kind of ready to let go. And that's kind of symbolized by that more modal, more prettier, simpler, slower harmony.
And this happens again also with the second track and the second to last track, right? Like there's like this parallel that happens at the end of Nautilus, right? Coming back with Comet, right? Explain that a little bit.
Nautilus is like a result of cyclical practice for sure, but also developing a pretty complex harmonic arrangement on those underwater 12/8 sections, right? Because you got this big like surfacing like ocean riff, like slamming against the rocks, right? And then the thing goes underwater. That's some next level stuff. That lays the groundwork for what happens at the very end of the song, where you go back to 12/8, but it's a poly rhythm, and you're getting like the classic 3/4 just hitting really hard, because the whole song is like 4/4 surfacing ocean riffs. 12/8 under the water. Alien fish harmony riffs, right? And then at the end, it just combines to the ultimate shark rising from the deep Leviathan riff. And that's what obviously Comet is, that you finally get it repeated. Because when it happens in Nautilus, you get it that one timer. And now it's cool for Nautilus, it totally fits, right? You do want it more, but you don't get it more. But you do get it in Comet. And when it comes, you're like, thank God. You know, it provides for a nice experience for sure.
It's like you give the listener what they want, the second song to the last, you know, it's like there it is all of a sudden.
And it totally crystallizes that whole Nautilus ending too, because you appreciate it that much more when you get it back and you realize like how important it is. Like that sequence of harmony and rhythm. It's just a classic 3/4. Like everybody knows the classic poly rhythm. Take your spin on it, set it up, and make it the most impactful possible. And that's how Nautilus work. We just set it up and it just crushes so hard. It's peaking, you know. There's some sections like that throughout the album where you think you want it another time. You know, classic gas station philosophy. Like we set up a lot of those riffs where you think it should repeat. And we talk about that in the arrangements a lot of times. Like, should we repeat this? It's so good. You know, I really maybe want this to happen again. It always seems to make sense. Like, nope, it's too much. It's an illusion. Do it some other way. And that's what Comet is. It's like, we did repeat it, just not there at the end of the song. It would have been too, it's like you ate too much cake and lobster, you know, by that point. It's so good. You want more cake and lobster, but it's like, you got to take a break, like sleep it off and eat it for breakfast. And that's where Comet comes in. Cake and lobster for breakfast.
Cake and lobster for breakfast. Perfect.
Nautilus, dude. It's that underwater, you know? Anyway, dude.
It's one of the more classic GSM sounding tune we have. So after like Doppelgangster, that's pretty foreign. That's like the whole initiation thing. Then you have like a good old banger, just like a drop D flat, straight riffing kind of tune.
Yeah.
And that's
classic huge banger.
Yeah. For that reason, it's very like driven by the guitar. You know, it's a lot of just guitar doubling, bass, just everyone in unison, just like slamming those riffs. And yeah, in the language that's kind of familiar, but that's also like very unique to, I think, the way Blake writes riff. That whole like bluesy, droning, bluesy, but also like Egyptian kind of language. Bluesy Egyptian kind of language. but also using that like flat 9. The third might be minor or major in big moments. You kind of never know, but it's always coming back to that blues, to that just like basic guitar technique, and that's awesome. And I think it's needed in that moment of the album. You know, after that whole beginning, that's all weird and stuff. Then we just go back to a good classic banger.
The trick is with the Egyptian blues, it's the major third melody over the minor third riff. Classic. That's the sound of Nautilus. That's that New England ocean rodeo.
You totally combine that within like the album too, like that like comes out totally, like the link between ocean horror and space horror, you know?
Yes!
It's essentially being the same, you know?
Ocean space connection all the way, exactly. It's the aliens of the deep, the aliens of the skies.
The underwater section. It's more like fusion-y, so it's a nice contrast. I think that draws from GSM, classic GSM, but the first album.
Yeah.
So the big riffing part is more like the second album. The underwater jazzy part, fusion part, is more like of the first album. It kind of brings everything together.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what goes into your process of composing as like a band?
So I had a lot of seeds, so many riffs, and we didn't need that many to develop into like ultimate, you know, iconic riffs. I just brought stuff that I thought sounded gas station, you know, because I'm always writing bangers, dude. And some of those, when you just write so many, some of them come out as like, that's the gas station riff, you know, that's the one where you bring it to the humans and just let that thing sing all the way home. So that's where it starts, and that's totally Nautilus was exactly that. Doppelgangster was too. I had a track called Doppelgangster, and I had like an 11 pattern, and he just went to town on that 11 pattern and invented, you know, 11 backbeat reggae of Doppelgangster. Instant iconic thing that just happened recently. But with all the songs, there's like, yeah, I have a seed usually, and then we just arrange the hell out of it. Dark Horse, the same thing. That started as like a form of another tune we called Sedation for a really long time. We just played the form of Dark Horse, you know, a bunch of times, you know, over the years, really like years, many years. It just revealed new melodies and stuff like that. And so the composition just emerged because it started with like a basic bare bones form, and we just were patiently seeing what would come from that form, and it just got absurd with what we did with it. To the point where we actually replaced certain parts of the form with like new material entirely because the form was so clear. When you just bring those seeds, you just start like working on the big picture stuff with the band. We all find our path. It becomes so clear that you can absolutely just chop it up because you're so clear on what that big picture thing is. And you guys, the three of us, you know, playing it, just get that like psychic big picture connection. And that allows one person to like, anytime you got an idea, you can be like, wait, what if we just like took away one beat here? Oh, what if we add a beat here and then make it a 6/8 feel when it was before like 2 half notes? Now it's 2 dotted quarter notes, you know, this kind of stuff, right? Like when you see the big picture form, you can just replace those chunks. So that's the answer of composition. That's straight up. Like, I know it's a complicated answer, but it starts with like seed ideas, just like cranking out those seeds, systematically creating them, right? And when you're creating them, you have a sense that gas station might, you know, eat those things for lunch, right? So you're like, okay, maybe this one's going to make the cut, maybe it won't. I don't care either way, because eventually I'm going to hit the freaking jackpot, because I'm just going to keep making those seeds. And when I do, and we put it together in the band and arrange it as a band, dude, I mean, that's like the ultimate formula. Ultimate formula for huge bangers. That's why Cyclical Antiquity is a monster, dude. Like, objectively, that's the reason. I just explained it. Huge, good systems.
Yeah, so you bring these seeds to the rehearsal space. that you think are gas station worthy, right? And then it just grows from there.
Another one that classically blew up from a seed riff was Autoprophetic. Huge banger and revealing deeper levels of the gas station funk. Like the motor oil toothbrush. Autoprophetic taught huge techniques, like in trying to produce it properly and getting the rhythm to sit the way we always knew it would. We didn't know how we were gonna get there, but we knew what it was supposed to be. We found new techniques. I remember like Antoine and I were like listening to it here, and Antoine's just like, what about like using the wah pedal, you know, on like 16th notes? 16th note like wah pedal funk, like with delay. Just reflecting back on it, it's like, yeah, that's like classic. Like of course that's like the #1 best technique of all time. Like, but we never did it, and we didn't use like those kinds of approaches. But I just remember him talking about it, and it just seems so obvious. He's just like saying like the facts of reality. He's like, yeah, you know, like wah pedal rhythm, like it's classic. And it's like, now that just revealed, like it is classic. It's instant GSM, that motor oil toothbrush. Like that's totally a sound that we, you know, use in the live setting. It totally changed my guitar playing. Like getting deep into the wah pedal. Revolutionized my playing, you know, to like learn wah pedal in all those ways and use it rhythmically. It's like a whole nother, you know, waking up a limb, you know what I mean? Like, literally, right? So I like my solo on that one. One of my favorite solos that I ever played.
A lot of the work we had to do on the Autoprophetic was driving that very syncopated funk, that 9/4 funk that we keep coming back to, that solo section. It's all in 9/4, and the melody is complex, and it's dissonant with the bass line. So that's where the need for like a driving funk 16 came, you know. Blake did a lot of good work on that, and also a whole part that's understated, but that helps us drive the funk is the whole percussion ensemble section. Greg Katie work that he did like in his basement.
That is seriously some of the best work you'll ever hear in world percussion. I mean, Greg is a very, very skilled, talented, knowledgeable individual, and I feel like on that album he literally tapped into like his highest self, because he orchestrated all of that stuff by himself, you know, because we did a lot of the work on our own with the arrangements. That's how you get them really good, is you go work by yourself, you get feedback. We gave him feedback, you know, we were all feedbacking each other, but he just crafted it into such perfection. I mean, that's why a track like Autoprophetic, track like Doppelgangster, I mean, New Sky, systemic. They have huge percussion arrangements, you know, like insane, like every detail accounted for. That's Greg KT. I mean, that's beautiful, masterful work that we are privileged to have in GSM. But it connects to the guitar technique. Like I'm using that like funk wah guitar to drive that rhythm, and Greg is using the entire percussion ensemble, like every piece of gear he owns. He's got the downrigger chain going in on that.
Oh, you're talking about saltwater fishing. I only do freshwater.
I know you're more of the freshwater fisherman, dude, the rivers of the mountains. So the other track that had that huge funk, you know, that motor oil toothbrush, was Big League. And Big League was that same kind of thing where Greg, huge percussion arrangement from Greg, driving that rhythm, really digging into each individual 16th note subdivision. You're getting the guitars, you're getting the percussion doing that. Big League just was that, just like that huge knuckle dragger.
Who were the rappers on that one?
First verse is CBS, dude. Cole Bernie Stewart, who is like a deep cut, right? This guy plays with Jean-Michel Pilk. I saw him play last night with John Hollenbeck, dude.
Natural born killer, bear slashing in Kodiak. The iller thriller falling off the map like the Zodiac. Surplus of requests on the present on wish lists. Invested in the guest, got more presents than Christmas.
I like the number 9, dude. Cole Bernie Stewart, CBS Productions, killing it on Big League with that. And then the other rapper on the second verse, Pete the Street Sweeper.
The average rapper's flowing beats, huge disparity. Flammable back roll, yo, check the mentality. You gotta know, the spitting for 6-4 is standard. Marathon gone, mystical rap vandal. Got their shit proper, check the demographics. Silver on the neck, coppers in the panic. Rap assassin, click, click, I'm the blasted drastic. Intimidation tactics like Shaq's magic.
Dude, this guy's got multiple aliases, but on GSM, he's Pete the Street Sweeper. Go listen to that.
You hang around Judas, I suggest you find some better friends.
So you bring these seeds to the rehearsal space that you think are gas station worthy, right? And then it just grows from there. Like, you practice as a band and things sort of rise up, right? Antoine might have an idea, Greg might have an idea, and then you decide from there. Is it improvisational sometimes?
As a composer, you know that composing and improvising, I mean, they are connected.
Moving in faith and humility.
Because you're kind of generating ideas by improvising almost randomly. But then you have systems to like select ideas more efficiently, obviously. Like, you know about keys, you know about the rhythms. The basic process is that Blake will come with a specific riff idea. But the riff is like, it's a melody, you know, it's something that's set. But the riff also has a context, you know. So I think when we practice, we like extract more general ideas from the riff. You can extract like a clave from the riff, right? A riff is a sequence of notes, but it's also a rhythm. So if you extract that more like general kind of dimension, that rhythmic dimension, then you can start like extrapolating efficiently.
That's the ghost rhythm.
Yeah, it's a ghost rhythm. You're like, oh, there's here's a clave. Well, if there's a clave, there's also like a harmonic rhythm possibility. You can go that way, but even in harmony, you can generalize. See, so I mean, if you have like F major, well, that's also like D minor. See, and that's something we do in Dark Horse. You know, there's like a basic duality where we will play a form. So there's like a major kind of way to play that form, and there's a minor kind of way to play that form. So like F majors will become like D minors, but structurally it's the same thing. You know, it's like the same harmonic rhythm. It's the same, basically everything. But by extracting kind of a structure from the initial like melody or initial like riff, then we can like explore different ideas efficiently, create like variations efficiently. And I think Dark Horse is a good example of that because it's really like a theme in variations. It's really like a form that's always coming back but like transformed.
Systemic. Let's talk about this one, right? David Binney's on this track. That's insane.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, straight up.
Yeah, literally. I remember listening to David Binney in your mom's basement, Blake, in high school.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And now he's on the album.
Yeah. David Binney, you know, cuts all the way to the bone. He was like the ultimate shred god of like our thing that we had going on in high school, like listening to David Binney. Like, what the hell were we doing, right?
Just listening to jazz.
When we thought about like who would we want on this, you know, GSM album, which is just, it's just blowing up. We knew it it was blowing up in our minds before it blew up in, real world. So we had high hopes for it. Of course, we're going to get some like ultimate level master on the freaking album. And we're like, who is it going to be? And I don't know why we just all thought it was David Binney, because Antoine's got David Binney history too. Like, that's why we have what we have. We both had like high school David Binney, which is just like, that is just like such intense music, to get into and get deep into. And that's what the GSM vibe gets to. It gets to that intensity level. So it's logical that you have David Binney who shaped a lot of the way that we think about composition and like climax and like dynamics and things like that. And it's just like, okay, what are you going to do on the heaviest riff of the entire album? Get David Binney to play a solo over it. Like, yeah, it was just like, okay, let's do it. But we always just talked about David Binney on Systemic, like straight up. We even had talked about having him on a different part of it, which is this 31 beat groove, actual 31. We were like, okay, we're going to have David Binney play a solo in the 31 groove. Classic gas station philosophy. We were just like vibing and just trying to feel out the best arrangements. Like, nothing is off the table. We can make anything up we want. Wait, I think we should have David Binney play over this big riff and actually do a vocal thing here.
The reason we see such a wide spectrum.
So that vocal thing, that iconic part of Systemic with that epic like country down home rock, blues, and riffing. Underneath like the rap.
The cyclical antiquity brings of equanimity. The reason I see infinite possibilities is through the vacuum open to receive the totality of my reality. The paralysis of analysis doesn't apply to me. My mind is free and the opportunities around each and every human being. Open your eyes and see the masterpiece.
That was supposed to be the David Binney thing. But look how it just turned into like rodeo, down home, white knuckles all day long, dude. That was like one of my favorite parts of the entire album. And then putting that vocal on top of it was just like, that was the natural extension to reach that ultimate intensity. But it's like country rap in 31 is what that is.
These beliefs in me are the seeds of the gas station mentality.
Isn't Systemic also a remix of the title track on Systematically Manufactured?
Yup, that's that cyclical coming all the way through and just blowing up into a monster of a track. I remember when we were learning Systematically Manufactured, that track, it was just the most ridiculous like arrangement. Like, it was just absurd, right? So much practice went into getting that one together. And it was such a sick riff too. So that was, to me, a totally natural one to revisit, And I love that beginning section on Systemic. I mean, you got so many textures on there.
I feel like previous GSM material was so dense in riffs, so dense in musical moments. It was very complex music, hard to learn and hard to perform. As we got older, maybe and wiser, we went for simpler versions of the material. Maybe looping sections, not playing as many riffs, making like shorter, more efficient ways of playing that material, because it's such a wealth of material, and I think it maybe we never played it perfectly. It was like so dense and so hard to play that we never played it perfectly.
Except like on the recordings.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And we had to drill hard for that, but it was like hard material to maintain and
hard to maintain, exactly. So bringing one of the ultimate hardest riffs from the last album. To this one was like, finally we're gonna let it breathe. Finally we're gonna like hear all that stuff that we wanted to hear. And it's like, it was just like a weird, I think it was like an immaturity thing, because I think we've come a long way since Systematically Manufactured in the way that we like think about music and think about life. So we're not trying to like punish ourselves anymore, you know? But there's always that musician mentality where you do want to like punish yourself to an extent. You want to just drill super hard and just like challenge yourself to the ultimate level. And I definitely think Systematically Manufactured is legitimately that. Through composed composition, nothing to rest your laurels on even for a nanosecond, right? But then you come to Cyclical Antiquity and it's literally about cycles. It's literally about resting on that riff for once. Like you deserve it finally. So yeah, I think it was like trying to be easy on ourselves, but also like letting go of that whole ego of like, oh, I need to play the hardest riffs ever. We're like, why we would never want to do that anymore. And then what ended up happening is you get songs like Systemic, you get New Sky. It's the same thing. New Sky was originally Sky Burial, like it was just not efficient or fun to play. Like it's just a monster of a track as Sky Burial, just an absolute monster, but there's no cyclicality, there's nothing to hang your hat on. It's just like hard. And then you finally let it breathe. You let all those nuggets, those trinkets in those riffs just breathe and expand, and you get a banger like that, you know, like the Thundercat bass riffs in New Sky.
That with this album we would go farther with arrangement. You know, we talk about David Binney already, but we have like so many of our friends playing on the album. So I think knowing that the arrangements would be more complex, using like voice, using synths, we could have like simpler tunes, you know, and play more on that dimension, play more with textures, play more with instrumentation. And Systemic is a good example of that. You know, we go through so many different colors. You know, we don't stick to the basic trio. We don't need to exert ourselves too much by like executing everything as a trio. So we were freer to dig into more like aesthetics, different aesthetics, and craft the tune through arrangement rather than through like hardcore like composition. And yeah, it starts like as a drum and bass. I feel like the drum and bass kind of fits the idea of a remix, right? It used to be a rock tune. Now we kind of sample those chords, those like dreamy kind of chords, and we make it like a drum and bass tune. So to me, it was like really in the spirit of remixing, of systematically reusing material. And in Systemic, you see a lot of a systematic reuse of material, especially starting from the middle section, where it kind of sounds like corn. Fat heavy riff where it finally like settles down and it's more like a backbeat oriented kind of riff,
but it's still in 31, that classic 31 backbeat illusion riff.
And then in that section there's like a kind of weird, kind of angular, creepy melody that gets introduced. And then kind of referring back to that ghost rhythm, ghost kind of melody. Well, that melody will like come back later to haunt us, to like help us with the rhythmic modulation. And then at the very end there's like a voice arrangement over the peaking section where like David Binney screams his ass off. That idea of systematically reusing material was very fruitful. It was very good, you know.
And then you've got all these saxophone textures at the end, right? Like the way that it ends is in this really epic way. Was that David Binney at the end, or who was that?
No, that was actually our good friend Jules Payette, who, just a classic Montreal player. And also part of that David Binney connection, because he obviously loves David Binney. It's like his main influence, I think. And yeah, we've been playing with him forever. Blake also.
Yeah, Jules is classic in like all the legendary underground folklore bands of Montreal, dude, like Idiot Band. Jag was the other band he played in with Antoine. and Guillaume. Like there's all these characters, and so that was part of Cyclical Antiquity vibe, is we got the characters, you know, the people who were surrounding GSM, like all the bands that we play with like early on, and just like the whole like kind of group of people that get down with that. We've called it like just saxophone metal or whatever that whole vibe is. You know, I don't know what it is, but it's been happening for a while, you know. David Binney is kind of like the almost reference point for it, I feel. GSM is very much like in that lineage of just like setting up the biggest moments ever. And I love how Binney, like, he crafted that solo. You know, when I talked to him, like, he was like, yeah, I'm going to record this like by myself so I can really craft it. And you can tell everything's a melody. You have that whole outro of Systemic, which you need right after this massive moment. You finally need like something. So Antoine composed that beautiful outro. And then you still got that saxophone texture, but it's like, oh, classic Easter egg. It's not David Binney anymore playing on the outro. It's Gilles Payette, right? And you got Gilles Payette's all over the album. I mean, he's classic, right? He's all over Dark Horse. And the iconic Gilles moment that just absolutely cracks the sky open, the thunderbolt of mastery, dude, is Ending of New Sky. End of the whole freaking album. That thing is just, that's that Joel melody solo, like improvised, but like found the ultimate melody, right? We have a lot of good moments like that on the album. You got Remy Cormier's got the same thing. The trumpet player, classic Montreal icon. He has the Cosmic Rodeo blues trumpet. That thing just smokes it. That's one of my favorite moments on the whole album, over that classic big GSM.
By far, our most like orchestral tune is Dark Horse. We have yourself actually playing also. Some sick choral work, choral trombone.
Huge trombone. Those parts are monstrous. Mountains.
We have also Alex Dodier on all the, like the middle sections. Just playing that Herbie Hancock kind of inspired tenor sax. But he's all over the tune also. He's playing flute in the intro.
Dark Horse is full of so many crushing moments. We've got that vocal too. The vocal from Tanya Noctical, literally linking to a chain forged long before. That's the cycle coming back around, kid. At the down home rodeo, you can hear it like you're at the farm.
In Dark Horse, there are a lot of contrasting sections. So we needed the help of the arrangement to kind of glue everything together and to create like parallels between sections. As we go, for example, the trombone takes like more and more room. Yeah, that whole like getting from like a more like breathy saxophone kind of vibe to a more like brassy orchestral kind of sound. It really drives the point. Yeah, that tune needed that warmth, that warm sound. It's good to have all of our friends reunited.
Yeah, it is a big reunion because, you know, we're like, you know, we're older than we used to be when we were like, you know, playing shows all the time, right? Now we're like more efficient with our time. So this was a great project for a lot of people to come together on, which ultimately culminated in the live recreation of the album where we had them all come back again because we needed them, you know, for the show, right? Three guitar players on that gig. you know? So we had classic Montreal iconic guitar players join forces and learn those tunes and help me bring the arrangements. I mean, that was like deep work practice that we did to almost like, you know, that's what's beautiful about the whole album. It keeps coming back in these new ways, right? It's like we first learned it, you know, in the rehearsal studio with the metronome, practicing GSM cycle philosophy, right? And then we go and record it and we get to experience it again. Then we arrange it and mix it and get to experience it again. And then we learn it for the live extended GSM ensemble. Like, unprecedented levels of GSM with 3 guitar players and saxophones and flute on stage with us, right? And we got to revisit the music and bring it to life in that live context and adapt it with those guitar arrangements. So beautiful. So then we get the people all back together again, right? We get Dodier showing up. We got Jules playing with us. We got Max, Roman, Francis, Ananda. I mean, army of guitar masters, straight up. I mean, it was just legendary. November 2nd, 2023. Ultimate cyclical banger.
Now we are reinterpreting the music once again, but with visuals, with videos, with merch. An example of that is the video clip we did for Systemic, our first single. It's a first venture in that direction, but I think the music still has more implications to reveal in the visual realm.
That's what we're on right now, and that's what's coming. Big surprise. We got mad GSM visual stuff, and that's that same thing. We're revisiting the music again, letting it reveal like multimedia interdisciplinary levels. That's what's coming down the pike. So if you haven't heard Cyclical Antiquity, dude, I got not much more to say to you, dude, at this point. Go check it out on Bandcamp. Watch out for what's coming. Watch what's coming. Multimedia interdisciplinary. Ride the cycle one more time. Get ready.